There was a young girl named Jasmine who was habitually late for Sunday morning prayer at her local church. She always forgot to set the alarm and wouldn't wake up on time. Finally, she got tired of her parents telling her off again and again and decided not to be late for the prayer. One Sunday morning, Jasmine woke up at midnight. Unaware of what the time was, she thought that she had overslept again and jumped out of bed. She quickly got dressed up and ran out the door without even looking at the clock. It was still dark outside, but it usually was dark at that time of the year when she goes to prayer normally. It was very dark and quiet, and there was nobody at the street. The only sound she could hear was the noise of her own footsteps on the pavement as she hurried towards the church. She was already very tired of the embarrassment of being late, and she did not want her efforts to go in vain. When she heard the church bell, she quickened her pace and took a shortcut through the cemetery. She got to the church just as the service was about to begin, so she got herself a seat and took a look around. Much to her surprise, she did not recognize anyone there. The church was filled with people and she had never seen them before, not a single one of them. They were all staring straight ahead and an eerie silence hung over the whole gathering. When the priest came out to celebrate Mass, Jasmine realized that he was a stranger too. The priest told the congregation to pray for the soul of a young girl named Fiona who had died the night before. Jasmine was shocked. She knew Fiona and she had never ever heard that the poor girl was ill or something. Something was radically wrong and she began to feel very uneasy. She looked around again, and as her eyes began to adjust to the dim light, she saw someone she knew. So Jasmine took a breath of ease. There was an old woman sitting at the back at the church. Jasmine's heart sank when she remembered who the old woman was. She remembered that the old woman had died last year. Looking towards the priest in the church, she saw that some of the people sitting there looked very strange. Their skin seemed to be pretty white. One of them turned his head and Jasmine discovered to her that he was nothing but a skeleton in a suit. Just a skull and some bones. This is a mass for the dead, she thought. Everyone here is dead except for me. She noticed that some of them were now staring at her. Their eyes were filled with anger. It was very clear that she had no business being there. Suddenly, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Nervously, she turned around and found her grandfather standing in a row behind her. He had been dead for 3 years. There was a very worried kind of a look on his face. He leaned forward and whispered in her ear, "Leave right now while you still can. You don't belong here." Her grandfather hissed in her ears. Jasmine immediately grabbed her coat and walked quickly towards the door. But she heard hollow footsteps echoing behind her and glanced back. The dead were rising out of their seats and following her now. Their faces were twisted in fury and hate now. Jasmine was terrified now and she dashed to the door, a pack of ghosts snapping at her heels. She felt skeleton hands grabbing her, trying to stop her from leaving. She twisted and turned, struggling to free herself from their grasp. Her coat was ripped off and her hat was snatched from her head just as she managed to slip out of the door. Screaming and crying, almost out of her mind with fear, Jasmine ran all the way to her home and told her parents about what had happened. Later that day, someone came to the house holding what was left of Jasmine's coat and hat. The items had been found in the cemetery, torn to shreds. Jasmine had a really hard time going back to that church because it brought back all the bad memories. She even stopped going to the church for a few months, but finally she had to adjust herself on the request of her parents. And now she has even started meeting her grandfather again in her dreams, and sometimes she even sees him in the church. When I was about 15, I traveled to Europe with my family. We stayed in Berlin, Germany, in a small inn for a few nights. My parents had a double bed on the second floor of the inn. My sister had a double bedroom next to theirs, and I was lucky enough to have a single room all to myself at the far end of the hall. When we went to check our rooms, as soon as I entered the hallway our rooms were in, I remember firmly that I felt like I had walked into a wall of bad energy. I just felt so unnerved and uneasy in that hallway, but I passed it off as an overactive imagination, I thought. I slept through the first night without any issues other than waking up several times. The next morning at breakfast, one of my sisters mentioned feeling really uncomfortable in the hallway, almost as if the air was crushing. It unnerved me even more now because I was not the only one who felt weird out, plus she was an adult at that time, so it further cemented the thought in my head that that wing of the hotel was odd. Later that night, I was peacefully sleeping in my bed when at around 2 a.m. I was woken up by something ripping the covers off me, and I was being jerked about 2 feet towards the end of the bed by my ankle. At first, I thought someone had broken into my room because when I turned towards what had grabbed me, a huge looming black shape was visible in darkness, like a man was in my room. I frantically flipped the lights on, only to find no one there. The windows were locked from inside, there was no one in the closet or the bathroom, and my room was also still locked from the inside. I stayed up the rest of the night because I was totally not able to sleep. The next morning, we were at the breakfast, and my sister mentioned that she was up half of the night because she thought she saw a person's shadow against the wall in her room. But she said that when she turned on the light, there was no one there. The strange thing was that the same thing had happened to me that night as well. It was just a bizarre and a very creepy experience for me. We checked out that day, so I did not experience anything after that, but it still freaks me even to this day. I was babysitting my niece once while I was staying at my brother's place. They had this baby camera set up in her room so that I could see her on the little TV that came with it. I was studying and started dozing off when I heard some whispering and realized that it was coming from the monitor. I initially thought that it was some kind of a glitch or something, but when I looked at the TV, there was a dark shadow near my niece's crib. I have never been more terrified in my life, but the shadow was clearly there where it had not been before, meaning that it was moving. I ran to my niece's room and looked around but saw nothing, but I took her the hell out of there. I went back to the TV and the shadow was clearly gone. Later, I told my brother about what had happened that evening, but he pulled me aside and told me not to mention anything about this in front of my sister-in-law because she will most definitely freak out about this. He also told me that he had seen the same thing several times now with the same whispering. They stayed in that house for about 5 more years, and when my niece was just learning to talk, she would tell her mom about her special friend whom no one else seems to see. Even to this day, this scares the hell out of me. When they moved out of the house, my brother told me that my niece had become very sad because she would miss her friend. Her mom would tell her that she can just bring that friend along to the new house, but all she would say was that he could not leave the house. We have never to this day told her about that damned shadow, and she apparently never saw it. So horror jam fans, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, kindly share this video with other friends. Also, tell me in the comment section down below which one of these stories did you like the best. If you want to share your real life experiences, you can share it to the email address given in the description box below.